Hello and good afternoon, everyone. This is the presentation for the OASIS Small Business Pools 1, 3, and 4. And this is the on-ramp webinar now that it has been announced. My name is Charles Perot, and I'm with GDIC. I'm a senior proposal manager for the company, and I'll be presenting today with Mr. Abmand, one of the executive vice presidents. And we want to get started here with a little bit of administrative discussion about how the webinar will proceed, and then we'll get into the material related to OASIS shortly thereafter. So without further ado, let's get started. If you have questions or difficulties getting connected, you can get to us through the chat box if you don't know it. Using this particular tool, the chat box is the second item down on the blue menu. On the right side, there's a box of controls, a dialog box. The second option down is chat. And if you chat to the admins, we can try to help you out if you're having some difficulties with the webinar. But also, we'll talk about getting a copy of the presentation just in case you want to see the pieces that you might have missed if you're still changing as we go along. So let's move forward. We are recording the webinar as usual. We've done this in the prior announcement of the OASIS offering, and there'll be a link to a recording of today's presentation that gets sent to you within 24 hours after we're completed here. We're going to hold a Q&A session. You can throw your questions to us via the chat box, but we will, unless there's something that needs to be corrected during the presentation itself, we'll be holding questions until the end after the presentation, and then we'll go through some of the questions. We'll group them together based on content and availability of the materials for us, and also those things will be available and sent out via email to the addresses that you guys have registered for the webinar under, and this will be within a day or so. If you want to hold your questions until later, you can jot them down and send them in. But as I said, we can take them through the chat box. Finally, you can download the presentation itself, this PowerPoint deck. If you go under the File menu, which is also in your dialog box on the right there, and what you want to do is the file sharing option, which is about third from the bottom there. So that way you can actually pull a copy of the file itself. So we want to start with talking a little bit about GDIC, the company in general, in terms of its a vast experience in pulling together the submissions and proposal responses, RFPs, and so forth. What are you bringing to the table by engaging GDIC to address robust offerings like we have here with OASIS? So you see in the slide here, I'll run through briefly some of the numbers that are associated with GDIC background. It's a company is growing at a steady and an impressive rate, 68% growth in revenue and 12% increase in IDIQ and GWAC wins, 23% in new clients. So these are impressive numbers in terms of bringing on new types of business, bringing on more existing business in these areas, and also not just retaining clients, but bringing on engaged groups in order to address new offerings. 81% win rate. Over the past 3 years, it's 81% win rate, which is at the very high end of the industry. So you want to use the principles and the structure and the operating procedures that we offer to get yourself the best chances of achieving success. Over 50 proposal writers, and this is more than 84% of them have 20 years or more of proposal writing and management experience. So this is more than just a writing firm and with resources for just putting proposal submissions together, but rather a vast amount of business knowledge and industry knowledge at your disposal when you engage a more experienced proposal writer and manager. And finally, 210 wins as of last year for 2018 alone. And this is over time. This exceeds 6 billion in the IDIQ and GWAX areas. So we're representing a very, very large amount of successful submission wins, and that's the bottom line essentially. So with that in mind, let's move forward. The government procurement for offerings such as this, you can see through this, a slide graphic here, what's the array and the breadth of the experience that GDIC has with various government agencies here, with very few of them untouched, and also many of these with multiple offerings that have been addressed in one. So today's webinar, let's talk about OASIS here. Why the webinar in general, and this has a lot to do with preparation. The types of offerings that are becoming more prevalent. Like OASIS, self-scoring systems are new. Companies aren't sure how to maximize the scores for such offerings. And proposal development has some unknowns. This has to do with, why is the focus on a score first, and then, how am I validating that? How am I being evaluated by the reviewers versus the traditional model? And then finally, important changes in the new RFP. This has been a previously offered and long-standing opportunity OASIS has, but due to some changes over through the end of last year and early this year, this is the latest, and there have been some streamlining and some consolidations that we want to address. Because GDI consulting can help. That's another reason for today's webinar, using the experience that I was just touching upon there. But we want to talk specifically about these kinds of offerings. GDI has 8 wins in the original OASIS small business, 2 wins in the unrestricted area, 4 wins on HCATS, 1 in the unrestricted area, and 6 wins on Alliant. And these types of opportunities and wins continue, and there are more in our background. So essentially, this is testimony that GDIC has ample experience with the challenges that you face when you're going after these self-scoring oriented offerings. What we have is GDI has a tailor-made scoring matrix to gauge your win probability and maximize score. So these are taking into account the variables that go into this type of a scoring opportunity, but also the weights and the emphasis priorities within each scoring system are taken into account as we pull that matrix together. So what are we going to do today? Now that we've laid the groundwork and the background, what we want to do is to do twofold. We want to understand the problem, the challenge that's being faced here, and then the solution oriented. The problem itself is just to tackle becoming familiar with self-scoring systems. Specifically, we want to evaluate the OASIS small business 1, 3, and 4 pool requirements. Excuse me. And we want to understand issues involved with maximizing the score for the scoring sheet. We want to get that up there highest in order to lead into the supporting documentation and the specifics of experience in your group or your consortium of applicants. We want to understand the compliancy barrier, the things that often cause snags. And then we want to talk briefly to the points about changes from the previous versions of the RFP for OASIS. The solutions are, we want to get a clear picture of the scoring system and the changes. We want to see what you need as far as minimum requirements, basic opportunity and appropriateness for applying, some of which can be addressed through partnering if you don't meet the standard criteria. Finally, what you can understand what can go wrong in developing the proposal, some of the common pitfalls, and also some points to follow to develop the winning proposal. And that is not just achieving compliance, but then to get to what is a noteworthy and compelling response to the offering itself. So the outline of the webinar will break down like this. As we move forward, Abvand is going to take over and speak to you on why is Pool 1 being readdressed here. Then we're going to move into the OASIS SB Pools 1, 3, and 4, general information, changes that have happened to the RFP offering. We're going to talk about the core disciplines and the volume structure, the layout, if you will, of your submission. We want to talk about minimum requirements in order to be eligible to submit. And then we're going to move into the OASIS specific scoring system. What is the breakdown of priorities and the numbers that are associated with each aspect of the submission? What can go wrong? Some of the things that if your emphasis or your understanding is off, some of the things that can cause trip ups and things that you want to do to avoid making mistakes to increase your chances and to make sure that you're compliant. What is the win strategy? Once you're past compliance, what is it that is going to move you forward to get you into that winning position, that opportunity to actually be awarded? And then finally, how to maximize your score. It oftentimes is just a matter of the right selection of your previous your past performance, some of your supporting documentation, the things that actually and definitively support the claims that we're making for the score, and also what your partners have to offer. Those careful selections can make a huge difference in maximizing score. And then we'll finish up, as I said before, with a Q&A, and this will address questions that we have that are coming in. Some of the attendees are already sending a few questions in. We'll be collecting those as we go, acknowledging them, and then addressing them together at the end in the Q&A session. That I will feed back some of the questions to Abvand. So with no further ado, then let me hand this over to Ab, and he's going to start getting into the specifics of OASIS itself. Are you available, Ab?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Charles. And I wanted to say first that although this is a OASIS SB Pool 1, 3, and 4 presentation, I'm going to touch base on the 8A RFP as well, because that has come out and that is essentially similar to this. So I will make a few comments on that. So if any of you who are seeing this are 8A companies as well, I think this will be useful for you too. Before we go into the actual presentation about the new OASIS, one of the questions that everybody's asking is, why is Pool 1 being rebid again? Because everybody submitted their their proposal last November, but GSA is now asking everybody to resubmit. The story is this: a company called Ekagara Partners, they filed a protest with GAO, the Government Accountability Office, and their protest had two reasons. One, they protested against the maximum limit of projects that the mentor-protege JV the mentor could have, because per the requirements, the mentor can only provide 2 projects. And they protested that. And then they also protested the fact that if you are a JV, if you were a JV, you could not have subs. You could not bring in subs and use their contracts. So GAO considered it, and they came up with a decision. They denied the first request, but they sustained the second one. In other words, they sustained the fact that, or to say it in a better way, they said that it was wrong on the part of GSA to limit JVs not having subcontractors. So that at the end of their decision, GAO asked GSA to actually rebid Pool 1. And that is the reason why GSA is now rebidding Pool 1 with Pools 3 and 4, because it was not in its schedule. And they have changed the RFP now, and they're allowing JVs, or at least they're not saying anything against it, allowing JVs to have subcontractors as well. So this is essentially the reason. And one note to everyone who did participate on Pool 1, don't think that you can just resubmit. There are a number of other changes. So I hope that I will cover some of them, and you might have to you might have to change your proposal in some ways. And then the submission way is completely different. So you have to submit it by the new method that GSA has put out, and I will cover that later. So now let's go into the general information requirements of OASIS. It's put out by GSA. It was released on April 29th, 2 days ago, and the due date is June 20th at 11 a.m. That's the solicitation number, so you can search for it on the FPO website if you don't have the link to it. It's a different page than the original OASIS SP pools, so you have to search for this number to find it. And the questions are due May 10th, so not much time left, about 10 days. And questions are not to be sent by email. They are supposed to be sent by Symphony, the system that GSA has put out, so that the proposal itself will be submitted through that, and the questions must be submitted through Symphony as well. So do remember that date. It's an important date. You need to have all your questions in by that date. And of course, this is a multiple award IDIQ GWAC. Okay, there are 3 pools that are allowed: Pool 1, Pool 3, and Pool 4. The number of awards is 190 for Pool 1, 160 for Pool 3, and 60 for Pool 4. So there are a lot of companies to be selected, and so everybody has a good chance to actually, if they do their homework well, to be on that contract. There is a size limit for each pool. For Pool 1, you must be under 15 million in terms of size, under the next code 541330. If you're uncertain about this, you can go to the SBA has a website on this, and you can check yourself whether you are small or not, in case you're unsure, but usually companies know it. Pool 3 is 38.5 million under next code 541330, exceptions A, B, C. And Pool 4 is under the next code of 541715, but it doesn't have a value. It's a number of employees. You need to be under 1,000 employees for Pool 4 to be considered small. Okay, here I've listed the NAICS codes for Pool 1. You need to have your contract, at least 2 contracts. I'll get to this later, but at least 2 contracts with this NAICS code to qualify for this pool, for each pool. And the most prevalent NAICS codes in Pool 1 are 541330, 541611, but as you can see, there are a number of other NAICS codes, a lot of them with regards to engineering, as well as environmental areas. It continues, the list continues all the way to 541990. So that is a prevalent one too. If you have contracts in that area, that's good too. So that's pool one, essentially engineering, administrative and management, and a lot of media and public relations and advertising systems. Pool three is essentially engineering, three of them. 541 exception A, engineering for military and aerospace equipment and military weapons. Exception B, engineering for contracts and subcontracts for the engineering services. And exception C for marine engineering and naval architecture. So in other words, you need to have at least 2 contracts with these numbers, with these NAICS codes. And then NAICS code, pool 4 is 541.711, which is research and development biotechnology, and then 541.712, which is research and development in everything else. So these are the 3 pools, and these were the NAICS codes that you need to have at least 2 contracts with those NAICS codes. There are 6 core disciplines or functional areas that your contracts need to cover at least 3 of them. Program management, management consulting, scientific services, engineering services, and this does not cover IT. When we say engineering, this does not cover IT. In other words, every other type of engineering except IT. So you can't put a software programming job and say it's an engineering service. Usually, however, there are a lot of mentions of other types of engineering services in even IT projects. So a lot of IT projects do actually fall into this. But at least administratively, GSA has said that IT does not fall into this. And then logistics services and financial services. So the projects that you need to present to the government need to cover at least 3 of these. This is the volume structure for the proposal. Just in parentheses, if there's any change for 8As, I will say it. So I'm assuming that, or for any of the pools in particular. So I'm assuming that all of this is similar for all of the pools 1, 3, 4, and even 8A. Proposal volume structure, 6 volumes. First volume is general, which is essentially the administrative stuff, and also the proof that you have the minimum, what they call minimum pool requirements, meaning those 2 contracts that have the proper NAICS code of that pool. Volume 2 is the responsibility volume, which is essentially financial documents and reps and certs. Volume 3 is relevant experience. Here you present all the information about your past performed contracts. I'll come back to what's the difference between primary and secondary later. Volume 4, you provide past performance, how well you actually performed on the projects that you present in volume 3. So volume 3, you present the experience, and volume 4, you present how well you perform, which is usually in form of CPAR documents or PPQs, past performance questionnaires. Volume 5 is systems, certifications, clearances, a number of capabilities of your company itself, not your projects, like whether you have approved purchasing system or not, if you have an FPRA or FPRR, if you have an EVMS system, if you have an accepting estimating system, CMMIs, level 2 or 3, or ISOs, ISO 9001, 17025, 14001, and then also secret or top secret facility clearance. For all of those, you have to put in the documentation here and you get scores for them. And then lastly is volume 6, which is cost price. And this is fairly simple. There's a long list of labor categories that the government has provided, and you have to price them. But the pricing is fairly simple, and we usually help companies overcome that very easily. It's not that you have to do a lot of calculations on that. Okay, let's go to the minimum requirements. Okay, now as Charles said, this is a self-scoring system. So at the end, whoever has higher score is going to win. But before that, there is a pass-fail system. There's a minimum requirement, and the government is not going to look at your score if you fail on this minimum requirements part. So I'm going to cover that first. The minimum requirements is you have to be small under the first NAICS code of the pool that you're going into. So as we showed, for pool 1, you have to be 15 million under 541330 and so on. So for each pool that you're targeting, you need to be small. If you're an 8A, you need to be an 8A and small under that pool. So you can't be a 8A that is larger than 15 million and still go for pool 1. So the small business size stands whether you are a small business, just a small business, or you're an 8A. You must also have an acceptable accounting system. Acceptable accounting system doesn't mean that you do have an approved, audited accounting system by DCAA or DCMA. If you have that, the better. But if you don't have it, but there's a form, you fill it up, and you mention, they ask you a few questions, and you say, yes, I'm ready to be audited based on the requirements. That's enough. Of course, you have to have a system that can be audited. But if you do have the system, there's no need to have the documents from DCAA or DCMA. Then you have to have 2 contracts that will have the following requirements. So 2 contracts. The 2 contracts must be federal contracts. You must be prime on them, not subcontracts to others, prime. And then you need to, the projects need to have been done or completed after November 13th, 2013. Or they can be ongoing, but if they're ongoing, you need to have at least 1 year of performance. So either they were completed after November 13th of 2013, or they can be ongoing, but you need at least 1 year of performance. So you can't use a project that you got 2 months ago. That doesn't have 1 year of performance. So that's one of the requirements. Another requirement is the NAICS code or the PSC code for that contract must be what the list of those NAICS codes I showed you for each of those pools. So the NAICS code must lie in one of those NAICS codes that I showed you for each pool. There's also a PSC code, which is different from NAICS if you're not familiar with it. And that can be the case. So even if your NAICS code is wrong, but you have the proper PSC code, it's a go. And PSC codes for pool 1 are essentially everything that starts with R. PSC codes are 4 digits. NAICS codes are 6 digits. PSC codes starting with R, except a few that are for pool 2, all of them are acceptable. Things like R408, 410, 499, these are all about management and consulting and that sort of thing. If you have a contract that has that PSC, it's acceptable. For pool 3, it's R425. So even if your NAICS code, for example, is an IT NAICS code 541512, which I think you did notice it's not listed in any of the pools, 541512. But if your PSC code is proper, you have a go on that contract. And finally, you need to have a minimum satisfactory rating for your performance on that project, on those 2 contracts. This is either in your CPAR, or if you don't have a CPAR, then you have to get a PPQ filled out by the contracting officer, a past performance questionnaire. So the government is going to look for these, check whether you're a small business or not under that pool, check if you have said that you do have an accepting accounting system, and then check whether you have 2 contracts with those requirements. If they find out that it's a fail on any of these, they're not going to look at the rest of your proposal. So that is important. Now, the good thing about this is that even if you don't have those 2 contracts, obviously you have to have your own acceptable accounting system and you must be small, but the 2 contracts can come from your subs. So if you bring in subs and they have the 2 contracts, you're good to go, at least on this, so you pass. Now 8As, remember, 8A companies, your subs must also be 8As. The small businesses for pool 1, 3, and 4, remember, your partners must be small under that pool. So you can't bring in a large company, you can't bring in even a large small business. If you're going for pool 1, your partner must also be small under pool 1, in other words, less than 15 million. So that's the catch for it, and for 8As, your partner must be an 8A2. But this allows you to bring in a partner and overcome this problem of not having 2 contracts with those requirements. Okay, now assume that we have passed the minimum requirements. Now the government is going to look at the way we are going to present our projects. We need to get the score, and I'll get to the score, but it's 10,000, and whoever has the higher score will get the contract. At least the number that I mentioned, 190 companies for pool 1. You need to present 5 contracts, and based on the features of those 5 contracts, you're going to get approximately 8,000 or a little bit less score. I'll explain the rest of it, where it comes from. But so those 5 contracts are the key for your winning. So you need to have the best 5 contracts to provide. Now, again, here, all the 5 contracts can come from your partners, from your subs. But again, remember, if you're an 8A, your partner must be an 8A. And if you're small business, then your partner must be small under that pool. But not considering that, you can bring in all the 5 contracts from your partners. So let's see what the requirements are. First of all, the 5 contracts don't need to be necessarily federal. They can be commercial, they can be state and commercial. So federal, state, and commercial contracts are acceptable. However, you still need to be prime on them. So you can't use subcontracts. You need to be prime on them, either on federal or commercial or state, of course. Again, with regards to the timing, they need to have been completed after November 13th, 2013, or be ongoing. Again, if they're ongoing, you need to show that they have at least 1 year of performance. There is an exception for that 1 year of performance. If the contract was completed and you have a period of performance of less than a year, that's fine. So, for example, you might have done a project that took only 4 months and it's done. That's good. Or it might be that it's ongoing, but you do have a CPAR available for it. So, for example, 9 months has passed, but you do have a CPAR for it. If that is the case, you can use that project. Other than that, you need to have 1 year of performance for ongoing projects. Now, the next requirement is that all of these 5, each of them, you need to be over $150,000. I mean, the annual value. When I say the annual value, it means that if you have a project that was done for $200,000, but the period of performance was 2 years, then per year would be $100,000. So you couldn't use that project. So they're going to divide the total amount by the number of years, and that gives you the annual value. So remember that you have to divide by the number of years to come up with the annual value. Now, there's also another catch to this. The annual value, the average of the annual value of all the 5 contracts must be over $750,000. In other words, you need some large ones, some $1 million projects to add. So when you get the average of them, the average should be over $750,000. assume that all of the 5 that you put in are 150,000. 150,000 times 5 comes to 750,000. And when you get the average annual, it goes back to 150,000. So that's not usable. So you need to use contracts. Some might be small, even as small as $150,000, but you also need to bring in large contracts. So at the end, the average annual value will be 750,000. And then again, the CPAR or the PPQ must show at a minimum a satisfactory rating for performance. But in reality, if you want to win, you need something above very good, and better still, you need to get exceptional CPARs and PPQs. Otherwise, because they have very high scores for exceptional, and you're going to lose if you bring in projects that are, say, satisfactory or mostly very good. So you must bring in projects, either yourself or your partners, which have exceptional performance. Okay, there are also, the previous slide is what we call them primary relevant experience projects, or REP, sometimes they're called relevant experience projects, primary reps. So this is the primary relevant experience projects that out of the 8,000, it gives you 7,650. So 7,650 comes from this. Now 350 comes from another type of project. They're called secondary relevant experience projects. You might get 0 on it. No problem. These are not required. This just gives you more score. The way that you're scored on this is that if you provide multiple award, and remember this is not single award, multiple award IDIQs or multiple award BPAs that have at least 2 task orders or calls, as they call them, based on the number of these that you provide, you're going to get scores. 2 to 4 gives you some score, and then if you have more than 2, you get more score for that. So that's something to look for, and sometimes many companies look for partners just for that. So if you have between 2 to 5, you get sometimes 50, and then 100 for 5 to 10, and then above 10 you get 150 points. And then another type of projects that you can bring in, or score that you can get, is to show that you have covered different agencies. They call it mission space, but it's essentially agencies. So if you show that you have had more than one of these types of agencies, you get more score for them. Protection and defense covers DOD, DHS, DOJ, Department of State, CIA, and FBI. Quality of life, they call it, which is Department of Education, DHHS, VA, USAID, HUD, NASA, and Peace Corps. So these fall under quality of life. Remember that, and the rest. Now, if you have 2 or 3 projects under the same mission space, under, for example, protection and defense, you don't get more score. What you have to show is that you have projects in multiple of these, and then you get a score. So this is one of the places that people go around looking for partners to get more score on these. Okay, so how does the self-scoring system work? This is for those who are new to this. It looks or sounds simple when I explain it, but it's really very complicated. You first assess yourself and give yourself a score. So they provide this self-scoring spreadsheet. You score yourself on that. You say, hey, I have this, I get the score. I have this, I get the score. I don't have this, I don't get the score. Now they have created this symphony system that you actually do the self-scoring online. But the previous submission, they had a spreadsheet that you had to fill out, and you would send that. But essentially, this is how you do it. So you self-score yourself. And then you substantiate your claims. You provide documents in a way that they have said how they want it, naming conventions, how you should actually arrange them, and all of that, to substantiate what you've said, substantiate your claims about the score that you have. So this is what you do, and then you submit your proposal through Symphony. What the government does is first they review for compliance, and as soon as they find out that there is some sort of a non-compliance issue, they'll put aside your proposal. And they're going to get hundreds and hundreds of proposals. So that's the first and best and easiest way to weed out, proposals. So we'll get to the issue of compliance later, but it is really important that you don't make some mistakes and are left out of here, even though you might have the best score in the world. So compliance is very important, and that's what the government is going to do right in the beginning, see who is non-compliant and throw them out. After they do that, then they rank all the proposals based on the scores, based on the self-scoring that each company has done. They'll rank them, and then they start checking their substantiations. If they are substantiating properly, or not, and then they might change the scores, or even worse, and I'll get to that. This time they've said that if we find out that you've not substantiated something or over substantiated something, they might actually disqualify you. But anyways, they're going to check all the documents that you've provided for substantiation and finalize your score. And then based on that, they're going to pick the top companies with the highest scores based on the number of that they're going to award on that particular pool. For example, if it's pool 3, they're going to pick the first 160 companies that have the highest scores. So this is the process that they're going to go through. It might seem simple, but we'll see that it is very complicated, at least for our side. In fact, they've put the burden on our side, and they've made their own work simple. At least more simple than, if we wanted to, if all these companies wanted to write proposals and they had to, check all the proposals against the requirements. So this is how the self-scoring system and the scoring looks like. There are a maximum 10,000 score, and the division is like this. The primary experience projects, so I'm talking about those 5 contracts. For those 5 contracts, as far as your experience, and when I say experience, it means, for example, what is the value of the contract? How many of those core disciplines? Remember, I mentioned 6 core disciplines. How many of them do you cover? Did you have subcontractors or not? Were they performed in multiple locations? Were they performed OCUNIS outside U.S., continental U.S., and a lot of other points. For all of those, you get scores, but the maximum you get is 3,650. Now, on those same 5 contracts, you get 4,000 for their past performance. So how well you did. So as you can see, past performance is really the king here. You get 800 points for exceptional past performance on each contract. And since there are 5 of them, you get 4,000. So those 5 contracts together, 3,650 plus 4,000, you get 7,650 out of those 5 contracts that you present. And then 350 points, I mentioned, come from those secondary experience projects. How many multiple awards or multiple award IDIQs or BPAs did you perform, and how many agencies did you cover? So you get 350 points out of that. And then we come to 2,000 points for the systems certs and clearances. The difference here is that all of this, the 8,000 that this comes up to, can come from your partners. Again, with those definitions that I said, for 8As, your partners must be 8A2. For small businesses, your partners must be small under that pool. But if you have that qualification, all this can come from your partner. But the systems, certs, and clearances cannot. They must come from your company. In other words, whether you have CMMI or not, whether you have ISOs, different types or not, whether you have facility clearance or not. Now, here I should also explain JVs. If you have JVs, you can, again, get all this 8,000 points from the members of the JV. Either JV itself, it might have performed projects, or its members. But there is a catch to it. The catch is this. If you have a JV and you use projects for one of the members, then you can't have it like this. All 5 projects coming from one JV member. So if you're going to use projects from the JV members and not the JV itself, all members must contribute. And finally, one thing about JVs, one other thing I wanted to say about JVs is that for the system certs and clearances, it's a little bit more stringent, and that is this. Either the JV itself must have all these clearances, certifications, I mean CMMI, security clearance and all of that, or all its members must have it. So if the JV doesn't have a facility security clearance, no problem. But both members, or if there are 3 of them, all of them must have that. Otherwise, you won't get the score. So you can, as you can see, it is better for most companies to actually go on a CTA, in other words, prime sub system, instead of a JV, unless they have to. Because on a prime sub system, if the prime has this 2,000 or whatever, I mean, some of the clearances, that's it. The other CTA members, the subcontractors don't have to have it. But on a JV, everyone has to have it, or the JV itself. So that's something to consider. And I know that a number of companies, when they changed and switched, their score went up. So that's something to consider when you're working on your score. One last point about JVs is mentor-protege JVs. On mentor-protege JVs, if your mentor, or even if you're a JV and you have a company that is large, if your mentor company is large, it cannot contribute more than 2 contracts out of those 5 contracts. So remember that. A large mentor cannot contribute more than 2 contracts out of the 5. So 3 of them must come from you, or they can come from your subs. Now this is new. Coming from the sub is new, because that was the subject of the protest on pool 1. Initially, GSA had said that if you have a JV, you cannot create a CTA and bring in subcontractors. Now that is resolved. So you might have a JV, but at the same time you can have subs. So you can have two contracts from your large mentor, and then the 3 can come from either you or your partners. I mean subs. So that's how it works. Okay, now let's look at the previous bidding for OASIS. These were the minimums, the cutoff point for the different pools. 59.25 for pool 1, 58.75 for pool 3, and 65.75 for pool 4, the last time the original OASIS was bidded. Now, don't take those seriously. Those numbers will certainly go up this time. Why? Because the government has allowed partnering. Originally, when OASIS was bidded, they did not allow partnering. So every company had to go solo. So that score is the companies' scores themselves. But now companies are partnering, and that is allowing them to actually increase their score. So that number is going to go higher. Now, with regards to 8As, it might not be very much higher, because originally GSA was talking about having partners not being 8As, But right now, at least, now that they have issued the RFP, your partners, your subcontractors must also be 8As. And since 8As are not all of them very strong companies, this number might not go very higher than this. But for SPs, you should consider at least, I would say, 1,000 or 1,500 more than this in some cases. Okay, let's look at what the changes have been, because some of you have submitted proposals previously on pool 1 or other pools, and you might want to know what changes have been. These are the more important changes I have outlined. There might be more, there are more, but these are essentially the more important ones. First of all, the age of the contracts is not 5 years now. It's from November 13th, 2013 onwards, so completed after that date. And that November 13th is the date of submission for pool 1 last year. So what they have done is they don't want some companies to claim again or protest saying that since you resubmitted bid, pool 1, we are losing contracts and things like that. So they have added a little bit more than 5 years to allow for all the pool 1 submissions of last November to actually be compliant as far as the dates are concerned. Now, here's the most important thing, I think, and some companies might have to change their proposals for this. You cannot use the same project in multiple proposals. That means that last time, for example, on pool 1, a number of companies did over and unders. In other words, they became subs to another company, and that company became their sub, and both of them submitted proposals. In that case, you would have companies A's project in both their proposal and in company B's proposal, and vice versa. Now, GSA is saying that you cannot do that. So you cannot lend projects to others and then use it yourself. It doesn't mean that you cannot lend your projects at all. It means that when you're lending a project to another company, remember that you're not going to use that project for yourself. You might want to, for example, give them other projects, smaller projects, or with less score, but do remember that you cannot do that for multiple times. What I'm talking about, of course, is on one pool. You can, of course, use the same project in a proposal in a different pool. So assume that you participate in pool 1, but do lend a project, become a sub to another company on pool 2, and then use your project. No problem. That's allowed. This restriction and this requirement is on a single pool. So consider that when you're trying to forge relationships and partnerships with other companies. Now, third and very important proposal, very important restriction or note, I should say, not a restriction, a note, is that they have emphasized it, that they can disqualify a proposal if the claims are not substantiated properly. This means don't overstretch your score. I know that a number of companies did that last time. And the reasoning was this: okay, at most they're not going to give us that score. Why shouldn't we, risk it? Now GSA has come back and said we are allowed to disqualify you if we realize that you're overstretching and you're not substantiating something properly. You're not giving reasons. So you need to be wary of that, and this is very important. You don't want to get, kicked out just for getting 50 points or something like that by overstretching. Excuse me. Now, one other thing that they have emphasized is on modifications. That was not very clear last time, and many companies did not have it. And that is, for example, if you're having amendments, the amendments must also be signed by the CO, by the contracting officer. So every document that you provide as proof must have a signature. So you can't provide just a Word document and then the rest of the amendments that changes the amount of the contract or changes the POP, period of performance, and all of that without signature. This was not very clear last time. They have made it clear this time. So that is one of the major checks that you have to do with regards to contracts, and then start running around after your contracting officers, pleading that they sign it again or something like that. So this is important to realize. They have also emphasized that home office and telecommuting don't count for locations, because that was the question of many people. If you performed a contract and you performed part of the contract in government premises and part of it as telecommuting or in a home office or whatever, that is not considered two locations. You're not going to get scores for it. And finally, the main change is the new way of submission, which is through Symphony. You have to send your questions through Symphony, and you have to submit the proposal through Symphony. So need to get yourself familiar with it, work with it a little bit. Don't leave that to the last day to do that. Okay, what can go wrong? I've said this many times, but I want to pound on it again and again. Compliance is the most important issue. If you don't do it well, if you don't do the compliance well, the government is going to do it well, and they're going to throw you away, because that is the first line of defense they have against hundreds and hundreds of proposals they're going to receive. They're going to put aside any proposal that has the minimum non-compliance. So you don't want to risk anything on that. So that's why when we do proposals for our clients, we put 3 people, not just one person, and then we do at least 2 rounds of reviews. And the reviews are done by people who have not done that part. And this is really important because you don't want to be non-compliant. Another thing that can go wrong, misunderstanding the requirements. This RFP is very complex as to the requirements. I try to simplify it and explain it to you, but there are a lot of it that I did not actually mention. I didn't want to take your time too much, but understanding the requirements is really important. If you misunderstand, either you won't get the score that you deserve, or you try to overscore yourself and then run into problem of that disqualification that I mentioned. Late getting proper signature from COs. As I said, you need to get proper signatures for all documents that you're going to present to the government. So you have to check all the amendments and everything, make sure that they have the signatures, and if they don't, you have to go running after the COs to get contracting officers to get signatures. Also, if you don't have CPAR, you have to fill out, get your clients to fill out the past performance questionnaires. And then again, you have to run after them to fill that out. And for commercial jobs, essentially, you have to do that because they don't have CPAR. So for all your commercial projects, you have to get those PPQs, past performance questionnaires, filled out. So you have to start early on those and put pressure on the contracting officers to actually do it fast. One other thing that can go wrong, not maximizing your score. You deserve more, but you don't do it, either because you haven't understood the requirements properly, or you're not partnering well. You can use, as I said, 8,000 scores, 8,000 out of 10 can come from your partner. So partnering is really important, and you really need to put energy on that, finding proper partners, and work, very small. Don't try to go for a partner that will resolve everything. I know companies that have 6 or 7 partners lined up because they're getting small bits of score from each of them, and at the end you get a large number out of the whole. So try to work on that partnering. I suggest somebody, if you're going professionally on this, somebody in your company should really put a lot of energy into finding proper partners. Actually, to be honest, many companies have already done that, and everything has been forged, or the relationships. So, but if you haven't done that, do that as fast as you can. Then what other thing can go wrong is not substantiating your score properly, which would mean that when the government reads it, if it's not properly done, they might not give you the score that you really deserve. So substantiating your score is really important. They have put out the requirements, how it should be, how you should highlight, how you should word it, how you should actually put sticky notes on the PDFs. All of this is outlined, but it's important that you do it properly. And then this new requirement, this new thing that can come out, stretching the scores too far, and you risk disqualification. So make sure that that's not in the works. And then not submitting the proposal correctly. We did have problems last time. Some companies just did not do it properly, and they missed the system. And now, since Symphony is a new system, everybody should get themselves familiar with it, so that when they want to submit, they have no problem. And of course, timing is very important. You shouldn't leave everything to the last day. You should submit at least a few days before. Okay, just to give you an idea about non-compliance, I think this gives you a very good idea. I couldn't get figures for OASIS, but I got figures for HCATS, which is another self-scoring system from GSA. It's more in the education system, but it does give you an idea what the problem is. On the SP side, the small business side, you can see that out of the 95 companies that submitted awards, 66 of them were eliminated, were disqualified because their proposal was non-compliant. And they only chose 29, whereas they were planning to choose 40 or 44, something like that. They just did not have proper prepared proposals. And this was a self-scoring, very similar to OASIS. Most of the requirements that I mentioned are similar in HCATS. So you can see this is a major problem in every company. And don't think that it's only in small businesses. Look at the unrestricted side. Out of the 80 proposals that were submitted, 39 of them were eliminated, disqualified. So nearly 50% of them were disqualified. So this shows you that preparing the proposal and making sure that it's compliant is really important, and you should pay all attention to it to make sure that that doesn't happen. And of course, that's our job to do it. Okay, what should your win strategy be? Okay, first, past performance, if you remember, got you 4,000 points quickly, very easily. If you have 5 exceptional contracts, you get 4,000 out of that. So the first thing when choosing contracts, when choosing those 5 projects, is to go after, first criteria is to go after past performance with the highest value, preferably exceptional. Okay, now assuming we go past that, then you have to maximize the use of your commercial projects. Why do I say that? Because in reality, you can talk better, you can approach better, and you can make friends better with contracting officers in the commercial world. So you can get better past performance questionnaires filled out by them rather than by the government. Many government agencies have a policy that they just will not give very good and exceptional past performance. Even if you've done very well, they're going to give you satisfactory. So you can't use that project even though you did very well on it. But on the commercial world, you have a much open hand there. So try to maximize the use of any projects that you've done in the commercial world. And don't look at the numbers because I'll show you why. There's a combination of them that come into effect to get you the maximum score. So you should not put commercial projects out of your mind. Remember that the 5 contracts can be commercial. The 2 minimum pool requirements, those 2 contracts must be federal. And that was the pass-fail type. But those that give you score, the 5, they can be commercial. Now, another thing to consider maximizing your score, and then we have a system called our self-scoring matrix, and we use that to maximize scores. And I will get to that shortly. We're running out of time, so I have to go faster. But I will show how that works, which helps you maximize your score. Make use of partnering, and I covered that, and multiple partners if you can, because 8,000 points come from that. Now, if you have friendly COs, contracting officers, that you can approach, they're very useful, first of all, to get good past performance PPQs filled out. Also, to get those missing signatures for amendments. And also, one other thing that helps is that sometimes your contracts do not have the proper NAICS or PSC, but if you have a friendly contracting officer, they can sign. There's a form that comes with OASIS, and if the contracting officer signs it, you can change the NAICS code or the PSC temporarily. So, and you can explain that to the contracting officer. Nothing changes as far as the government's databases are concerned. Just for OASIS, he approves that, for example, the PSC code for this contract is the proper one, and then you can use that contract. So this is one of the things that friendly COs are good for. And compliance, I've said it again here, check compliance, think compliance, and eat compliance, because it really is the crucial factor. And finally, of course, why I'm showing this webinar to you, outsource. If you have not done this before, and I really mean it, not necessarily to us, but do it with somebody who's done the job before. These self-scoring stuff are new to most proposal managers. I've seen many proposal managers with over 25 years that get stuck on it. And it's, I mean, it's nothing special because it's something new. It's completely out of the standards and normal ways of writing proposals. So outsource your job if you can. Okay, how to maximize your score, which I covered earlier. I will show you our matrix in a minute. By using our matrix, we can understand what are the requirements and how to win. We can also gauge our chances of winning. We can ensure that we are compliant. We can maximize the score, specific scores, and then we can also find partners that will give us the highest score. Because just finding any partner doesn't help. You need a partner. You need to know where your holes are. You need to know how you can actually maximize your score by bringing in a partner. Where you should, what type of projects they should have. So all of this, we have created a self-scoring matrix. I'm going to share my screen with you on that. I hope everybody is seeing that. Okay, so this is our self-scoring matrix. What we do is each contract we put as one line into this matrix, and then the matrix speaks to us. First of all, it has some very complex formulas here that calculates, considering all the different requirements that the government has given, and the scores. For example, the annual revenue, if you have the annual revenue between 750,000 to 2 million for that contract, you get 25 points. If you get 2 to 4, you get 50 points. 75 points for 4 to 6 million, and over 6 million, 100 points. And similar to this, there are many other requirements in the RFP spelled out. So what we have done, we've created this, and it calculates this and does give us an idea of which projects to use. It also gives us an idea whether this particular project is good for our pool qualifications. In other words, we can use it for one of those 2 projects, or it's good for one of those 5 projects. These 2 columns show that. If it's green, it means that yes, we can use it. If it's red, it means that we cannot use it. For example, this first project doesn't have the proper NAICS code or the PSC, so we can't use it as pool qualification project. But it does have the other requirements, so we can use it as one of those 5 projects. So when you look at the coloring and the dates and the numbers, this gives an idea. For example, for this sample project, this company had 9 projects. And so you can see that the scores that each project at the end brings up to us. And you can see which 5 to actually pick. Now, look at this one. This is an interesting one. The contract value for this one was $165,000 for 1 year. So $165,000 for 1 year, you don't get any value for the annual revenue for it, but because it has different other capabilities, like all the 6 core disciplines or multiple locations or ancillary services, it has the highest value compared with all the other contracts. Even a large contract with $8 million in 1 year, that is less. That got $1,350 and this got $1,400, because the total value comes from the sum of all the different requirements. That's why this matrix helps a lot. So you shouldn't just go and find the first 5 largest contracts. They might not give you the highest score, but this matrix gives us that. And we know that the blue ones here are the 5 that we have picked, and based on that, it's going to give us 6,575. So this is the matrix that we will use initially to actually assess all your contracts and then come up with the 5 best. This also tells me, for example, that if I wanted to bring in a sub, I would need a sub that would give me a score more than 1075, because if the sub brought a project that was less than 1075, it's not going to help me. So I can plug in the subs projects here too and find out which of them are better and then use them. So that's how I said that this can also help us find subs that can actually maximize our score. Another sheet that we use is for compliance check. This is a preparation. After we've decided the 5 contracts, we use this spreadsheet to actually go through each document that needs to be prepared, and there are usually between 50 to 70 documents that need to go into your final proposal. And we go through each of them, we put in notes, and then on each iteration of reviews, we prepare, review, we put in notes until we get it finalized. And when it is finalized, it's when all the notes have been cleared and we're prepared. And this review is done by multiple people to make sure that there are no mistakes. So this is essentially the way that we actually do these proposals in-house. Now, the services we provide, of course, we can provide you free consultation, of course, but we do full proposal development with the processes that I mentioned: scoring, assessment, optimization, forms preparations, all the forms we prepare, and then the full proposal assembly. We do cradle to grave. In other words, you give us all the documents, we do everything else. And then full and multiple compliancy checks. This is if we do full proposal development. Now, some companies have their own internal shop who has done OASIS or similar to OASIS projects. For those, we have a system that we do review and auditing. So they prepare the proposal and we audit it, we review it. And we do 2 rounds of reviews and we check to see if their scores are maximized. My suggestion is for those companies who have not done this before is not to do it on their own. But again, it's a call that you have to, it's a business call, I guess, that you have to make. In this slide, you can download on the right-hand side, and you can get our contact info. So if you want to contact us later on, my phone number and email is there. And we come to the Q&A. Charles, are you there?
Yep, just setting up my microphone here and finalizing some grouping of the questions. So let's jump right into what we have there. There's a large chunk of questions that are basically centered around the minimum requirements versus the 5 of the representative, or excuse me, the minimum contract requirements versus the 5 total representative contract requirements. So can you describe again what that means in terms of the prime versus the subs being the contributor of those 2 minimum requirements, federal contracts, versus the 5, and how much your subs or your JV is able to contribute, the 2 versus the 5?
Okay. First of all, the 2 are the minimum requirements you don't get any score for. The 5 are the ones that you get scores for. Now, as far as the CTA partnership is concerned, in other words, the prime-sub relationship, all of them, the 2 plus the 5, all of them can come from your partners, not you. You don't have to provide them. So, you know, you might have a situation where all the 7 contracts will come from your partners, from your subs. And I should mention that those 2 could be part of those 5. In other words, those 2 contracts might have the qualifications to be, 2 of the 5, but they can also be 2 separate contracts, and then the 5 contracts can be separate. But as far as partnering is concerned, all of them can come from your partners. Now, if you have a JV, again, the JV, the members must contribute to it. So for the 5, if all of it comes from the JV company itself, that's fine. But if one of the projects is from one of the members, then the other member must also provide a project. In other words, either all 5 projects must be from the JV, or if you're going to use member companies to provide the projects, all member companies must provide them. And it's the same for the 2. So that's for JVs, normal JVs. Now, I did mention a exception, and that is an exception when usually in a mentor protege JV, if you have a member that is a large company in a mentor protege, the large company cannot provide more than 1 out of the 2 minimum pool requirements, and not more than 2 out of the 5 for the 5 contracts that you get scores for. Did I answer your question?
Yes, that's that takes care of about 4 or 5 of the questions that were submitted. Also about the mentor situation, so we can move on. For those who are submitting, there's a discussion about whether or not, if you have the NAICS code, they're saying, what about the PSCR code? In other words, if you don't have the NAICS designation on a project, is the PSC code enough?
Well, if it's a commercial one, you have neither. So, I mean, for commercial ones, you don't get any points for that. I'm talking about the 5 contracts. The 5 contracts, you don't. It's not a mandatory thing to have the proper NAICS or the proper PSC. But if you have it, you just get 150 points. So you get scored. Now, if you have federal contracts, you get the 150 points. If you have commercial ones, you can't get NAICS or you can't get PSC. So that's it. Now, going back to the two contracts, those two contracts, it's an or. So either you have proper NAICS or you have the proper PSC. You don't have to have both of them.
Okay. And this has to do with the timeliness of it. If you have already applied, what they are saying are related to the PPQs that were sent out. Are those still valid if those were sent out, say, back in December, or will new PPQs have to be resubmitted to COs?
Well, this they have not mentioned this, but I think they will accept it. But this is certainly one of the questions that must be posed to them. I suggest that companies do not risk it, because one way is to submit the question and then wait, and then a week or 2 weeks before the deadline, they say, no, you have to get new PPQs, and then you're dead because you can't do it in 2 weeks. So I do suggest that you do not risk and go after them. But I do think that there is a possibility that they will accept using the same PPQs.
Okay. Where do we go to comply? Someone has asked, JV Mentor, I'm sorry, this is something that we covered already here. Are there any special rules for the CTA or partnering other than being the same small business or 8A? In other words, what qualifies, are there any things that will restrict or in other words, be a requirement for who your partners are?
Okay, if you're participating in the small business pool, just being small under that pool. So, for example, if it's pool 1, your partner must also be small under that pool. In other words, 15 million or less under 541330. This is for 8As is added to. This remains for 8As, but also the partner must be an 8A. So that's it, and nothing else. So those two are the requirements.
Okay. We have one more for primary projects. It says there's a score for multiple subcontractors. Do second or third tier subcontractors count?
Read please again.
Okay, it says for primary projects, there's a score for multiple subcontractors. Did you use multiple subcontractors? Do second or third tier subcontractors count? In other words, do your subs have subs? Does that count?
No, first tier subcontractors. But there's a good thing about there I forgot to say is that 1099s, independent contractors, count as subcontractors. So if you did a project and you had 2 or 3 people as independent contractors used their 1099s, they are considered subcontractors. But the answer to the exact question is no, you can't use second and third tier subcontractors.
Okay. And last, there are a couple of questions that basically just have to do with the expectation about award. It has to do with, one asks, about minimum points, and we're saying, if the minimum contracts to qualify is 2, are you saying that it will take a minimum of 5 past performances to meet the scoring necessary to achieve an award? And then the other is, what do you believe the minimum points will be? So in other words, can you readdress the matter of what the expected threshold for serious consideration is versus the minimum requirement of the 2 contracts? Okay,
sure. First of all, in the RFP says that for getting the score, you need to provide at least 3. So the minimum requirement is not 5, is 3. But it's obvious that whoever provides 3 contracts is going to lose. So that's why I did not cover that. I said 5 contracts. You really need to have 5 not even 4, because you have to have 5 contracts. So that's the minimum that you have to provide. Now, as far as the pool's previous numbers are concerned, and let me show that to you very quickly to get there. Having long PowerPoints has that problem, and we just missed too many clicks. Okay, so this is the previous times numbers. Pool 1, 59.25. Pool 3, 58.75, and Pool 4, 65.75. I mentioned that these were at the time that you could not partner. So if you want to be really strong on it, I would add, and you want to feel comfortable, I would add 1,000 points to it, to each of these. Especially for one, I would say, for example, 7,000, 6,500 to 7,000, but I would say go over 7,000. For Pool 4, I would go to 75 or even 8,000. And for Pool 3, I would go to 7,000 and above. So these are the numbers because of the partnering. Now for 8As, it's not that steep of an increase, I don't think. This is just a personal, suggestion. I don't have any intel, but I don't think the 8A numbers are going to be as steep as these because 8As do not have all the usual qualifications that larger SPs have. So I would assume that you should add at least 500 to any of these for 8As. That's the minimum for 8As. Over.
Okay. And one of the last ones in the group here is there's a couple of financial questions. One says, if your company lost money last year, is that a consideration? And then direct labor rates is mentioned in the pricing. Do we need to use the direct labor rates that they mentioned as a guideline?
They're going to do a responsibility check. So they're going to look at you have to provide 2 years of financial statements. But if you, I don't think that is a very important thing, whether you lost money or you got profit, unless you were bankrupt. But as far as labor rates, the direct labor rates, they give a minimum and a maximum. As long as you're within that, you're good to go. And most companies try to stay very close to the maximum. The only check they're going to do is to check that you are within that minimum maximum. And of course, you have to add percentages like fringe and overhead, profit, and things like that. If those numbers are not excessive, you're good to go. They're not going to score you on price. They just check that you're not over budgeted or under budget. That's it. Nothing about if you have a better price or score you, anything like that. They just want to make sure that you are within the range. That's it.
Okay. And then there was a series of folks who were asking about the average, some of the examples, that were on there, whether or not those were within the averages that we're talking about. How do the average amount that you're saying in your slide earlier for the 5 contracts, how does that break out and how does that apply? For the contracts, you have a minimum that you have to establish for the qualifying projects.
Right. The annual value, the minimum must be 150,000 annually, but there is no other limit. So it might have been done in 1 year, or it might be an ongoing project. And one question that I will answer it myself, is that what happens about those option years? If it's an ongoing, all option years are calculated into the amount. So assume that you've done only 1 year, you have only 1 year of performance, and you've done 1 million in it. But the total project is a 5-year project and it's 15 million. They're going to consider it as a 15 million contract and then divide it by 5, and the annual value will be 3 million, not the 1 million that you actually did. So if it's an ongoing project and it has options in it, they're going to consider all the option years. But the minimum is 150,000.
Gotcha. Sounds good. Let's see. Are there any other burning issues here? Partnering small business. We talked about the 5 performances and prime CTA. Okay, I believe that's essentially what we've got for groupings of questions here. There are some specifics that have kind of been reiterated as we go along, so we can confirm those answers. Someone was asking about, do we have statistics on the number of people who applied to Pool 3 previously? Those kinds of things I assume we'll need to do a little bit of follow-up in order to respond to.
Yes, they can communicate with me directly, with us. My email is in the slide. If they download the slide, they can communicate with us, and then we can respond to any specific questions. And also, if any companies want us to help them in the preparation of the proposal, again, they can contact us and we can set up a call. We can go in more detail about the projects they have, and then go from there.
Yes, we have a few people asking how to contact and the aspects and the extent to which GDI can help. So feel free to field those questions and get estimates through those contacts in the presentation file.
Right.
I think that's pretty much what I have for questions here.
Okay. Then we have to thank everyone, and we'll be sending the replay to everyone. So in case you missed anything or wanted to listen to the question and answer again, and also if you have any questions, contact us. The replay will be sent to you tomorrow. The system will do it automatically. And then, as I said, feel free to contact us if you have any questions or need us to help you. Right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
All right. Thank you, everyone.